KYOGO is our best player. Don't think he's our most important player.
Battling relegation at Rennes in January for me as a player of his quality is a strange one.
They celebrating that KYOGO's finally gone, the scourge of all these teams scoring 8 goals against them and all that, and he leaves, and 24 hours later the what?
Oh my God, Jota's back. That's what we're discussing this week on 20 Minute Tims. I'm your host, Jamie, and this is Melly.
Yes.
And that's Stephen.
Hello.
Well, last week, 2 weeks ago, we did, oh my God, KYOGO's gone. And I'm glad we got that out of the way because now he is officially gone. And people sort of, in the YouTube comments, we saw you there.
Yeah.
KYOGO's going nowhere. Stop being miserable. No, that patter, Bill, he's gone now. You can go back and watch that one. Joking aside, we are going to cover the KYOGO thing. But we have got Jota to talk about. We've got Celtic, the Champions League. We've got a new contract for Kasper Schmeichel. Business being done, Stephen?
Yeah, it's bittersweet week, isn't it? What a week it's been. Champions Leagues. What a 24 hours we had.
Oh, aye.
Coming straight off a Champions League game right into KYOGO's leaving and Jota's arriving.
Yeah.
Remarkable stuff. If you'd have told me a couple of weeks ago that Celtic had even been linked with Jota, I'd have thought, right, okay, it's got to that stage of the window, has it? Absolute silly season. We've Kieran Tierney, Moussa Dembele, Odsonne Edouard, get them all back.
Bring the band back.
Aye, basically, it was all those sorts of stories. So to have actually brought him back, something I thought had absolutely, literally no chance.
Do you not think that would be the ultimate piss take, though? To literally get them all back for the 10. They all left for the 10.
Rangers, Armstrong up to?
I know Rangers think that they collapsed the 10 in a row dream, but then what, we 4 in a row? So next year's 5, you get Kieran Tierney back, Edouard back, get Stuart Armstrong
Lustig
back for a swan song. Lustig, it's like Avengers Assemble.
Craig Gordon's still going.
Craig Gordon, they'll come back to finally win that 10.
It would be
Ultimate
great
piss
fun.
take.
But I genuinely thought there was literally zero chance of signing Jota just because of all the various complications surrounding wages. The thought that he's not going to fancy coming back here after all this time, and he's probably done it all. So I'm absolutely buzzing that Jota's back. Quite frankly, it's a ridiculously good signing. I mean, fundamentally, what I've always said for a while now, and I admit that it's a bit oversimplistic of me to put it like this, but it is the function, it is the primary function of a football club, be it the recruitment staff, the manager, the board, all of the above, to get the best players available that Celtic can afford on the pitch for us fans who fund all this stuff, right? That's the primary function of it, and I'm always moaning that they don't do that, and I'm left looking at players that we sign thinking, there's a player in there, but is he the best guy we can afford for that position? And all the time, a lot of times the answer is no, we could definitely afford better than that. On this occasion, no, we actually have gone out and got, I think, the best winger that Celtic can afford that's on the market right now, and I'm really happy with it.
It was such a big 48 hours for Celtic. Last week we had a special live podcast on patreon.com/20minutetims. That's where you can support the podcast. Links are in the bio. Martin Melly, how do you feel about Jota, as Brendan once called him, returning back?
Oh, delighted with that. It's one of those ones where after the summer there, when Jota went to Rennes, you thought, this is just going to be every window now on. Celtic are going to be linked with him. I can't handle that. I can't handle the heartache. I've done it all before with Paddy Roberts sitting right beside me. But this one, we got...
For the benefit of podcast listeners, what on earth are you talking about there?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
He is not sitting right beside you.
I'll explain. In our beautiful new studio, if you're an audio listener, Melly has one of Patrick Roberts. In fact, for visual listeners, because everyone else, it just looks like a football boot, he has a signed match-worn Patrick Roberts boot sitting on his shoulder.
It is his left foot, so just need a Jota right foot now to go beside that. But yeah, absolutely delighted with it. Of all the wingers I've seen over the years, I think Jota is the best I've seen at Celtic, and Kunin Maeda up there as well, probably in the top 5, and we've got all 3 of them at once. It's an incredible bit of business as well to get 25 million for a guy, and then 18 months later bring him back for an absolute snip of that. And
5.5 years as well.
You've got 2 other good wingers already at the club. This is unheard of. I don't know what that's. Jota, Adamida, Engels, Trusty, all 6 million plus spent.
Brendanomics, that's what they call it. So the Jota thing, so Stephen, you said it's silly season a couple of weeks ago if we were linked to Jota, and that did start a wee bit, but the chat or the rumour at the time was he wasn't keen, and as the window went on, there started to be a bit of smoke and fire about Jota coming back, and as we sit here, he's signed today, and there was a lot of talk. Brendan Rodgers did a press conference the last couple of days, and he says, well, he didn't say it in so many words, but he says the truth is Jota wasn't keen to come back. He wanted to protect his legacy, and I had a chat with him, and I says, like, I really want you. And what I think Brendan sort of says, look, worst case scenario, you're going to come here, you're going to improve. It's a bit of a reset for you. And Jota had said that he did consider it, and he spoke to the manager, but he needs to be somewhere where he feels at home. And that's my one reservation. Like, I'm so pleased myself Jota's back. I think he's a brilliant footballer. I said on a recent podcast that although I like Kuhn, I just don't think he's Jota. I think he's a downgrade. Despite the numbers he's posting being comparable, I just don't think he's as good a footballer as Jota. So I'm really, really glad that Jota's back, and I hope that this is the environment still that Jota needs. Because I think listening and watching a lot of what the guy says, he feels like a guy who's really connected to playing football and connected to the environment he plays football in. And I think he needs that. He needs to feed off the crowds. He needs to feel wanted. He needs to feel like I think he said that he needs to play someone that's got soul and life. And I get that. And I can understand why that would plug into what made Jota so good those first 2 times around. And I just hope that environment still exists for him. I kind of want to, when he was getting revealed at Celtic, I was kind of like, don't do any of the George Michael stuff. Don't do a compilation of his old goals. I don't want Jota to arrive with the expectation that he's just going to pick up exactly where he left off. And very helpfully, Jerry McCulloch on Celtic TV put that to him. He goes, are you ready to pick up where you left off? And I was like, oh man, that's so much pressure for a guy, especially when a player, all you remember is the highlights. Because when you say Jota, you don't remember the sort of odd game where he just drifted in and out or didn't do much and we criticised him. You remember him chipping Rangers and scoring free kicks against Real Madrid and all this. And to the question asked by Jerry, Jota went, look, I'm just wanting to get my... He goes, he was very fair. He goes, I've not played a lot of football recently. I'm not my fittest. He goes, but time on the pitch, minutes on the football pitch and on the training pitch and training sessions, he goes, hopefully I'll be back up to where I want to be. So I think that was very honest for him, and I really, really hope that it works out. I think from Celtic's point of view, Stephen, the way you said getting the absolute best players on the pitch, it's a no-brainer of a signing. It's an absolute no-brainer of a signing, and I honestly think I don't know who he's going to keep out of the team, and because I think he will have to keep one of these guys at the team, and I don't see it being Maeda.
Well, that's up to him. That's up to him to prove himself. If he's not necessarily the fittest just now, it might take a few weeks, and that might make Maeda and Kuhn sort of double down on their positions, because those guys have been absolutely flying. They're the 2 best players.
Can they double down anymore?
No, that's the thing.
Hat-tricks every week.
They've got 15 and 16 goals respectively, probably double that in assists as well, between them. On the move itself, I think you're right. We did speak about how we'd heard that Jota wasn't necessarily immediately keen on it, but from his own point of view, we can talk about how brilliant a signing it is for Celtic, and it is. I mean, there's the potential in this team, and not potential in the sense that they're all young players getting better, but the potential for this to click. When you look at the amount of talent that Celtic have got now, it's potentially frightening. But when you look at it from his point of view, he could not afford another season out in the wilderness like he's spent a year and a half now. That he's in his mid-20s now. That the time for that is over for him, and he must realise that. So having spent whatever it was, a season in Saudi Arabia, played maybe 25 times in and out of the team, obviously worked out very well for him financially, I'm sure, right? But football-wise, this is what our main concern is. And I don't mean we're worried about it, but that we're talking about the football here. Did nothing in Saudi Arabia of note, because that's, without all due respect, it's not a great level. It just isn't. Goes to France to try and resurrect that a little bit. Doesn't work out from there really either. Started out quite well, but he's fallen away. Jota at 25, a player of that talent, cannot afford to surrender another season of his career to potentially floating around. I mean, I'm sure he would have had options. You could take a pick, go to West Ham, Crystal Palace, something like that, right? And maybe just become part of their squads. Doesn't he play a lot again? And then all of a sudden, that's 3 seasons of your career just completely wasted. So I think Celtic could well be the best environment for him. That's not defeatist. He just wants to find somewhere we can actually develop and call home for 5.5 potential seasons going forward. So I think it's a great move for him as well, because he knows, or we know, what he's capable of here, and we just need to coax that out of him, really. Maybe it might involve a little bit of patience at first, because you're right to point out that if a player of that level leaves, you very quickly find yourself distilling it down to the highlights. You don't remember all the maybe slightly mediocre games that a player like that has. We're all focusing on just go straight back to that. Might take a bit of patience, but it's a great move for all parties if everything clicks. I know that there is that there's that unwritten rule or that kind of fear that you have about football players where you shouldn't go back to previous clubs because sometimes it doesn't really work out. But that's a worry for later, to be honest. It's an absolutely brilliant signing.
I really hope, Millie, that he gets a lot of satisfaction out of playing for Celtic again, because as Stephen said, he was a player that was in the wilderness, and people get a lot of criticism for going to Saudi. It's very easy to do that in retrospect, and it was very easy to do that actually quite quickly. But you got to remember that summer when the Saudi thing was kicking off, there were genuine people going, look, they're going to rival the Premier League. Look at the money they're spending. Look at the players they're bringing in. So, and plus, the wages that the likes of Jota was getting. I couldn't really criticise him too harshly for joining what looked at the time like a league that was going places, that was paying mega money, that massive names were going to. The Rennes move, I think, was maybe a mistake. I think he would even admit that himself, but that was probably him trying to get back into Europe. It didn't last very long from there, so he has got a bit of rebuilding to do in terms of being a footballer, isn't he?
Yeah, he does. And the difference with Jota and a lot of the guys that went to Saudi Arabia is he's a lot younger than him. Some of them had 10 years on him. A lot of the players were in the sort of latter years that were going out there, but he was one of the sort of first to go there. And it's not like last year at Celtic, where this time last year we were like, we've no signed a winger yet, what's happening here? But this year we've got two good wingers. He goes in to supplement that, and you say, whose position's he going to take? Well, Celtic are going through to the playoff, and Maeda's suspended for that game, so there he goes in straight away. And then Celtic are ridiculously, that game from the weekend is now rescheduled for next week, so Celtic have got game after game after game up to the international break at March. So we've seen in recent games with Palma and Yang coming in, that's not the answer. And James Forrest, again, we've spoke here about, we're going to need to address that situation. He's going to be 33, 34 soon in the summer.
I think must be, yeah.
So we need a sort of plan for
until then. He's
nah. Cutting it right off.
So this is ideal for Celtic, that we've got three good wingers right now, and already with Nicholas Kuhn's numbers, he's getting linked away. So we're sort of planning ahead, which is unheard of for Celtic. But the difference with Jota was he was a younger guy than all the guys that went. He's back here at an age where he could rebuild, and in 2 years' time he could again get a move. That's absolutely fine. But he was in that position for me where, Stephen, I think you mentioned West Ham and Crystal Palace. I think that's fanciful. I don't think there's a chance teams like that are coming in for him. The Rennes move didn't work out. The manager got sacked quickly after he came in, and it just hasn't worked out for him. And after that, I don't really see any French teams going in for him. He's not going to go back to Benfica. Premier League teams, not a chance. So the guy could have found himself in a position where he doesn't know where to go because of the wages he got in Saudi Arabia. He takes a wage cut to go to Rennes. He's probably taking a wage cut to go to Celtic. If he wasn't going to Celtic, where would you go after that? And
I think he was taking a wage cut to come here until Brendan Rodgers got involved, is what I heard. And then I heard Brendan himself say, a player that really wanted to hear, and I wanted to speak to him. I think Celtic's first wage offer was a bit pitiful. I think what Celtic did, I don't know for sure, but I suspect what Celtic did was take his old contract out the drawer. The one he left, went, well, we could just change this one says 2024, we could just rub that out and we'll just change the date, but the money will stay the same.
Just blow the dust off the contract and put it in front of him. It's a roller coaster of a ride of a 24 hours for Scottish football as well, isn't it? Because everybody's celebrating, and you know who I'm talking about. Everybody's celebrating. The KYOGO's finally gone, the scourge of all these teams scoring 8 goals against them and all that. And he leaves, and 24 hours later, what? So Jota is in. So yeah, a remarkable turnaround.
I worry for him when he's been here a month, and then his wage slip comes through, and just those tears will stream down his face. A year ago,
you're not in Saudi anymore, kid.
No, there's a couple of zeros missing here. But with Jota as well, Celtic loaned him. Then we got the deal done to sign him. When he left, you never felt like it was time for Jota to leave. It was one of those ones, we're going to have him for a couple of years now and he'll move, and then the Saudi thing pretty much came out of nowhere, didn't it? And he was one of the first to go. So Jota coming back, you can't say he's been there and done it all. I think there's still unfinished business for him here. I think there's still a lot for him to do. Look, you've seen how we were getting scalped at the time, but scoring in the Bernabeu, that was a massive thing for him. And we want guys like that to be playing at the Champions League. And having Kuhn, having Maeda, having Jota, that is a Champions League level wingers. They're all been there and done it already this season. Jota's done it before, so we've got that. And we know that this season we've seen it. Kuhn's out for a couple of games or Maeda's out for a couple of games, the quality drop off is so much. It won't be like that, and it's not like last year again where we need a winger to come in and hit the ground running because we've got nothing. If he has a good game, brilliant. If he needs a couple of games to bed in, we've got 2 other good wingers there.
See, just once before Celtic go out and sign a striker, because I believe that is the objective.
Yeah, Brendan said it.
Everyone's saying
Needs to be, yeah.
need to replace KYOGO with a proven or at least a decent striker coming in. None of this like short changing the fans with 1.5 million signings, anything like that. Just once though, before that happens, Jota, Kuhn, Maeda, all 3 of them, no positions, no tactics, just let them go. Just all swapping positions, all just running everywhere. Want to see it.
I was saying a couple of weeks ago that I was saying a couple of weeks ago, my thing for Celtic at the moment is I want this now to be Brendan's team. I want it to start to take shape and see a Brendan Rodgers team. I think Brendan's more than proven himself. I think it sounds ridiculous, but when you're looking back at our Champions League record, the run we've had in the Champions League under Brendan has been frankly ridiculous. The amount of unbeaten games, like, we've very quickly forgotten how poor we've been in recent Champions Leagues, and then Brendan comes in with the hodgepodge makeup of some of his players, some old players, some players that have been here since he was here first time around, and manages to turn it around. And
now we're bringing them back.
And now we're bringing them back. But I think Jota's a Brendan player. I think he is a player that Brendan pushed the boat out to get, even if he'd been here before, obviously under Ange, but I think he's definitely in the mould of a Brendan player. He's more quality. He's more of a quality player. That word Brendan uses.
See, a Celtic, Jota should be an everyone player. Basically, it shouldn't depend on manager at all. There's always a space for Jota. Yeah,
and so you've got Jota, you've got Engels, you've got Ida, you've got potentially another striker coming in. You've got Kasper Schmeichel. All these guys that Brendan has had a say and that's wanting to come to the club. You're starting to see these guys go, hold on a minute, this is like a different. This is not your £2 million punts here and your £3 million punts there. And I know, like, people within Celtic could argue that Nicholas Kuhn, one of the best players in the squad at the moment, was a £4 million punt, and AJ, and we've had this discussion, but there is an air of like more trust within the club, hopefully developing with Brendan. So Brendan's saying, like, there's talk of like Celtic going out and they're trying to buy Kvistgaard, and he could cost anywhere up to €13 million. Again, you're like, this is more that trusted, established Brendan's boys. You know, like, you're starting to spot that within the squad now.
Yeah, and all these guys we're signing, it's not as if, that word again, these guys aren't projects. Nicholas Kuhn was playing regularly for a couple of years at Rapid Vienna. Engels was playing regularly for Augsburg, wasn't he? So it's not as if they're guys that are coming in and going, see, they might need to drop in and out and then play. These are guys that should come in and play and then be first team regulars. And the more guys we bring in like that to improve the first team, the better it is. Whereas before we were selling one guy, bringing in 4, 5, 6 players, scattering around the squad. And where are they now? We're coming to the end of January, and what looks like from Brendan's first window, it could be Bernardo's the only guy left. Everybody else will have been and could be gone if Nawrocki goes. So we're getting to the stage where we feel Celtic should be running, doing that. But for all intents and purposes, we are minted. We must be one of the richest teams in the world, not by money, but what we bring in compared to what we pay out. And we've got the money there. And this is what we're always asking. I think with this transfer, it's a bit different. I don't think Celtic went into the January window going, do you know what, there might be a chance to get Jota. I think this is just an opportunistic one where it's worked out for him. He's had to have a wee bit of convincing. Club have went, if there's a chance to get Jota, you just simply take that. Same with Kieran Tierney for me. A lot of the time you maybe think about, do we want to go back? But with Jota and Kieran Tierney, it is absolute no-brainers. You go out and get these guys, they improve.
That's another one. Now with Kieran Tierney, I would add him to that sort of Brendan collective. Definitely.
Yeah, already has been, of course. You see, just to pick up a point you made there, Mel, see the project thing that we tend not to talk about, like what Celtic are doing just now under Brendan Rodgers versus the old model of bringing in players to try and develop them on. This is how it should work. Like Engels and
bring
Jota,
in projects alongside these guys.
But even at that, look at the level of the younger players that are coming in. Engels is he's not a teenager. He's not from some far flung league that we've never really heard of previously. It's like he's a player of a proven certain level of quality that could get an awful lot better. Jota's the same. Jota's not as young as Engels, but Jota could vastly improve as a player based on the fact that he's had 18 months of his career basically taken out from under him. So this is how you do that, as well as develop players, because there's every chance that whatever it is, 9 or 10 million, whatever's been reported for Jota, there's easily every chance you could take him in for 2.5 years and sell him on for a profit of that.
25 million again?
Yeah,
Just keep just keep doing it.
Bring him round and round. But this is how you do that model. It's not about bringing in damaged goods from other countries and then try and create them into a player. You take players who have a certain level and try and hone that somehow rather than trying to build a player out of sort of bits and pieces.
Aerodynamics.
Yeah, and Brendan can just go in there and say that, look, you've got me Jota here, 8 million quid, 9 million quid. First season, you brought me Palma, Yang, and Tilio.
Yeah.
And by the end of the window, all three of them could also be gone as well. So you get what you pay for most of the time, don't you? Look, it's football. I was listening.
It's not impossible to waste your money, though, but this is another part about getting it right. It's another part of being smarter about it.
Yeah, I was listening on our podcast, Improving Scottish Football, and they had the CEO of Falkirk on it, and he was talking about, like, our manager's got a great transfer record. That's unheard of. You're not going to get them all right. And Celtic now are trying to get more right than wrong rather than the time before where we're sitting here going, what are these guys going to contribute? Nothing. We know what we're going to get from Jota, and it's quality.
What is the biggest thing that Jota brings to the side?
Flair.
Yeah.
For me, you said recently Celtic have got a excitement problem.
Yeah.
And while Maeda and Kuhn are great players and great at what they do, they don't have that je ne sais quoi, do they? That wee skill where they can...
I don't know you can speak French.
You can speak Portuguese now. Incredible.
It's just that X factor, that guy that can nutmeg somebody or lift it over somebody.
Gets asses off seats,
yeah,
as they say.
just that guy when he gets on the ball. For me, the first player I seen like that at Celtic was Paulo Di Canio. I didn't know what he was going to do. Jota's a bit like
Certainly
that.
didn't.
No. Never do with Paulo, do you?
Still don't know what he's going to do these days. Never ceases to amaze me, that guy. But on the football pitch, Jota is just that something different. The best winger I've seen at the club because he excited me. Yes, it wasn't, like you say, Jamie, it wasn't always brilliant every game. He's a winger. There's going to be good games. There's going to be great games. But he had a bit of everything. He had that flair, he had that skill, but he also had an eye for a pass as well, and that's unusual for a winger. So, bit of everything. And plus, he scored one of the greatest Glasgow Derby goals we've ever seen.
Oh, yeah, one of the true classics. Free kicks as well.
Which we immortalised with some absolutely wonderful, expert, unique artwork. By the way, those are for sale. We put those up for sale if you want our big cartel.
They must be about 25 quid.
No, they are £400.
Whoa, yes.
But if you want one signed by us, it's £900. Get in touch via DM on Twitter and we'll sort that out.
You shouldn't have said that. We should have said they were signed and then just casually stick it on there like you did for Melly's present a couple of years ago.
Celtic's
Jota.
excitement problem. Getting a winger in, Stephen, that can beat a man is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, well, look, Maeda isn't the greatest of dribblers. That's not really what his game is about. Kuhn does take a lot of players on. He's not good the eye catching.
It's going on the outside. It's different, isn't it?
He's not got that eye-catching element, and quite a lot. You're right. Quite a lot of Kuhn's dribbling is across the box. He does that all the time. He takes it from one side, dribbles all the way across the box until he gets a shot away, and
until the crowd have shouted "shoot" 3 times. Shoot, dunk, shoot, dunk,
and he's saying,
shoot,
extra touch, shoot, extra touch. So it does have that different element, different edge to his game that Kuhn does. He's one of those hesitate to use the cliche mercurial winger, but that's exactly what he is. He can take free kicks as well. I've not really had that.
Oh, we've not scored one in years.
No, I've not had one in years. Jota might be the last one who scored a free kick, right? So Engels looks as if he's threatening. He's knocking on the door with a goal from a direct free kick, maybe directly from a corner, who knows, but there's definitely that. I said at the time when Jota was at the club, he's our best left winger and right winger. So he's versatile. He can pick up a number of different positions, and that number being 2 as I listed him. But he's definitely got more elements to his wing play than either of the 2 current options we've got. So it's just the possibilities are virtually endless with the attacking talent that Celtic have got just now. I know we've taken a big blow this week as well by losing KYOGO, but it really did soften it by bringing a player like Jota. And he's not exactly the same player, obviously. He's nothing like the same player, but when you lose a player like KYOGO, you immediately think that's an awful lot of goals to come out of a team. No, maybe not so much these days. With KYOGO, you're maybe looking at 18 to 20 goals a season, kind of versus the 34 he once scored. But it's still quite a lot of goal scoring potency that's out of the team when a player like that leaves. So Jota coming in just sort of softens that a good bit.
He does, and in his last season, his goal scoring form was great, and he scored spectacular goals out of nothing. So that's something else to add. But if we were sitting here, if we rewind to the back at the start of January, and you to ask me, we could buy a winger. What type of winger would you want? And my answer would have been Jota.
Yeah.
And now we sit here, 4 weeks down the line, and Jota's in the building, so I couldn't be happier for that.
I'm so glad he's back, and I really, really hope it works out for him. And I just want him. Just want to give him patience. I don't want. He said himself he needs to get himself fit. He needs to play more games. He's not played a lot of football, but he's in the right place with the right manager and the right fans to do it. He put up on Instagram, "I am fucking home," and I thought, "Yes, you are. Yes, you are." So he came from Rennes. We sold KYOGO to Rennes. We did a bit about KYOGO leaving, and partly it was like the MLS wanted him, and then Rennes came in, and I suppose we might as well talk a wee bit about that move as it's now signed, sealed, and delivered. KYOGO went to Rennes. Apparently, he's doubled his wages. Celtic got €10 million for it. Brendan Rodgers said they tried to convince him to stay, but they couldn't convince him, and he wanted to go. It's not often, Melly, that Celtic sell their best player. I don't think there's many arguments there. KYOGO's our best player. We sold him in the January window. So that sort of throws up a lot of problems for Celtic, really. I mean, we'll talk obviously a bit about KYOGO and the player he was and how much we enjoyed seeing him play and all that sort of stuff. But right now, Celtic have got a problem. KYOGO's gone, fine. We need to replace our best player.
Yeah, we do. Brendan Rodgers said it. He was asked in the press conference, look, Maeda going to play up there? Is it, well, possibly, but no, I want another striker. And that's all obviously good to hear. Big links with Chris Garden. Don't know if it's going to happen now, this summer or whatever, but I believe we'll get somebody in, whether it's a loan. The KYOGO is our best player. Don't think he's our most important player, and I don't think
distinction.
He's even in the top 3 this season. Callum McGregor, Carter Vickers, probably Kuhn, Maeda could all make a stab at being the ones that are up there. Look, I'm not saying he's a bad player, of course, because please listen to me. I do not hate KYOGO. All right,
He hates him. You should see what he says while his microphones are on.
Let us know in the comments how much Melly hates KYOGO. It's apparent.
You call him a legend and you get accused of hating him, but
You're
Melly
labelled a prat.
Melly walked in earlier on and goes, well, it's the year of the snake. And I googled it, it is Japanese year of the snake.
Yeah. But of course, he's a brilliant player. He will be sorely missed. It's so easy enough for me sitting here the last couple of weeks going, do you know what, it might be time for him to move on. Tell my heart that when it's signed, sealed and delivered and you see him in a Rennes top, I'm not
That's
quite...
a shit football shirt, that Rennes one. I saw the press photos, it's crap.
Not quite ready for it, but he's been absolutely brilliant. But I just felt it was time for everybody that a move was in the off for him, and if Celtic are going to move on, that's probably what they need to do, getting good money for the guy at the right time. By all intents and purposes, he wanted to go, and is there a point keeping a guy like that when it gets beyond that point? He changed agent after signing a new contract. He's been absolutely brilliant, but it just felt like it was time, and he's sort of diminished a wee bit this season. I don't know if that's the way Celtic are playing. I don't know if that's him, maybe a bit of both. He's still a cracking player, and he'll be sorely missed.
I've
Legend.
just noticed.
What?
See what you said there about Rennes having a crap shirt?
Yeah.
I've noticed that Jota, having left and come back, all he has done is skip that horrendous strip from last year. Maybe that was the defining factor.
Yeah, the sort of terrible
he
one.
missed out on the worst hoops that have ever been created.
The second worst, the Magnus 7-stripe hoops is still for me the goat of shit hoops.
Jota's just jumped from one absolute classic hoops to another one and skipped the worst one in between. I see you, Jota.
We'll still to see next season's. Completely threw me off of that. Let me bring it right back round. Stephen, if you were KYOGO Furuhashi, would you, in an ideal world, would you be moving to relegation, battling Rennes and Ligue 1? It's
a risky one for me.
It's a risky one for me. I think there's similarities between the KYOGO and the Jota moves. Insofar as Jota has come to Celtic, and I'm sure he's happy to be here, but in an ideal world, he wouldn't be here. KYOGO is probably happy to be, in a top 5 league and playing in the French league and playing for a new club, making more money and all that sort of stuff that comes along with it. But I think in an ideal world, he probably wouldn't want to be at Rennes either. I think there's an element of marriage of convenience for both of these players moving on, and I just wonder if KYOGO was a wee bit.
What do you think, that if Jota wasn't at Rennes, KYOGO wouldn't have went to Rennes, or vice versa? Jota wouldn't have came to Celtic if Rennes didn't come in for KYOGO?
No, well, I don't think there's anything that connects the pair of them. I just think that if a better offer had come in for KYOGO, he probably, if you know, another club, a Spanish club or a better club came in for KYOGO, there'd be no way at Rennes. I think he's maybe just, I suppose what I'm saying is I think he's maybe snatched at this move a wee bit. He's seen the clock ticking. He's been trying to get a move. Maybe the move that he really wanted just hasn't come in. He was thinking about Atlanta, then Rennes come in and go, do you know what? If it's them or the MLS, I might as well take them in January. To me, it's an odd one. January, there's just, I don't want to call him desperate. I think maybe he wanted to move in the summer. Brendan made that clear and we try to keep him on. Why you would move to battling relegation at Rennes in January, for me, as a player of his quality, is a strange one. Maybe he can pull them out of that hole. Maybe he can, but I don't know, man. It's a weird one for me.
I don't know is the honest answer to that, because you make a good point. The rush to get out in January, and this is not a condemnation of KYOGO's attitude or anything like that. This is not he down tools and he jumped at the first move or any of that rubbish. Like, he wanted to go months ago, as Brendan Rodgers said. So the necessity to push it through from all parties in January, maybe does strike me as slightly strange.
Well, the news sort of filtered out on the way home from the Young Boys game, didn't it? It was filtering out from there. So you can't really say it's coincidence that Celtic get through. Then a matter of less than an hour later, we're getting news that KYOGO's on the way.
But it may well be that, I could only speculate, but it was MLS previously, so it was Atlanta we were talking about just a couple of weeks ago when that odd sort of leak and sort of announcement came out, right? So previously it was that. I just wonder if there was an element of, right, this is a top 5 league, regardless of the fact that it's kind of fallen away a bit in recent years. It's still a major European league. This is my last shot at it. Ideally, I kind of want to be there as soon as possible. Yeah. But I do come back to that. Did it have to be right now?
Yeah.
But again, football, we're always told it's a short career. You need to take the opportunities presented to you. Maybe it was just a case of, well, I don't know what's going to come in the summer. If anything, it might just be MLS again. However, I do have this shot at like a proper European stage. Now, again, people will argue back against that and say that he's trading Champions League for that, but that might only be another 3 games maximum potentially. But again, there's no doubt that playing in the Champions League is of higher prestige than just being in France.
Yes.
But add that to the fact that he has doubled his wages. It's just that it's a change, it's a new challenge, it's a new lifestyle for him. All these things roll into the fact that it wasn't urgent, it wasn't desperate, but it just suited every party to just do it now.
I don't know how, I've just had a wee look there. Rennes are currently 16th out of 18 in the French league.
Right.
They are 4 points off the bottom, having won only 5 games all season and drawn 2. It's a club that are really in the mire. I heard on another podcast, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it was a puzzling way that Celtic approach wages. And it's the same with Greg Taylor, and it's the same with a few players insofar as they bring KYOGO over, who's, say, for talking sake, on Japan is on like 10 grand a week in Japan, and we pay him 20 grand a week, and then he'll come to us and go, I want 40 grand a week on a new contract, and Celtic will take the approach, well, no, because we doubled your wages before, so we're not going to double them again. We're not going to quadruple your wages over the course of a contract. So he was never going to get that money at Celtic, even though like 40 grand a week is what reported at Rennes. It isn't we pay players that kind of anyway.
Yeah.
KYOGO's one of our better players. So
Engels is on north of that, to be honest, these days.
It must be Callum McGregor. The Kasper Schmeichel apparently is rumoured to be the highest, or one of, if not the highest paid player in Scotland. So we'll come to him in a minute. So I just think it was a weird thing where if money was an element, as you said, Melly, we're loaded, surely we're no losing out our best player and because we didn't want to pay him top wages.
No, and even if you were to argue and say, look, 40 grand a week, he is one of our best players, so he should be on that. To be honest, I'm not sure it's a lot. Well, I'm just guessing, but I think it's more the fact that I'm getting to play in a top 5 league. KYOGO's come to Europe, he's done that. He's been at Celtic, he's won trophies, he's done that. He's played in the Champions League, he's done that. These guys, as Stephen said, it's a short career. He's probably got milestones he wants to tick off, and the MLS will probably still be there in 2 years, but I don't think a shot at a top 5 league will be there in 2 years. So it might just be a chance for him to go, do you know what? And it's easy for us sitting here going, why would you leave Celtic when we are entrenched in it? We are supporters of the club. Celtic was a club to him. In fact, there might be a chance he never heard of Celtic before he came here. So it's just another club for him. Maybe it's a sort of stepping stone to where he wants to be, and that's absolutely fine because the reason he got to that was because he was absolutely brilliant for Celtic,
Yeah.
like absolutely unbelievable.
Injury elements potentially as well. Now, there's, as we record this just today, there's been all sorts of talk that he's failed a medical, or that patter that flies around when a deal is slightly delayed, like it has been. Now, in fairness, it has been slightly delayed because
it was announced just before we sat down to record this.
Yeah,
Aye.
so Brendan Rodgers said on Friday that it was potentially going to be done in the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
And it kind of rolled into Monday. So did Jota, and he expected both of those to be done in the next 24 hours, and it didn't happen. So that sort of opens the
Save a couple of days' wages.
yeah, exactly. So,
Apparently it was because, just because you mentioned it, Stephen, apparently it was because Celtic wanted to announce at the same time
Right.
as Ren announced KYOGO. Celtic at the same time wanted to announce Jota. Because why?
yeah.
Because who cares? Because the rumour was out for a week and a half before it, and we all knew it was happening.
So the slight delay of a couple of days did open the door for all sorts of speculation about him failing medicals and all that sort of stuff. I didn't believe a word of that, because like, players don't really fail or pass medicals anyway. It's more a sort of assessing of risk when it comes to players carrying niggles. But there's no doubt that KYOGO has had that recurring shoulder thing, and I don't know. I don't feel what KYOGO does. He's obviously more aware of his own injuries, his own body, than I am. So I've tried to, despite my best efforts. KYOGO knows his body better than I do, but so there's every chance. Again, pure speculation here. There is a chance that he has just felt that and he's thought, I don't know how much longer I've got in this, and I don't know how many opportunities I will get to play in, albeit a struggling team, but in a proper league. Ren were in Europe not so long ago. I remember Celtic played against them only a few years ago. So they're not a nothing club by any stretch of the imagination. So I can only imagine that it is possible that he has just felt the clock ticking on it and thought, I'm just going to go for this while the opportunity's there for me.
We've spoken about all the sort of ins and outs, the boring bits. Mainly, we get to talk about KYOGO, the player. I mean, I said Celtic have lost their best player. The guy was magnificent, the best since LARSSON. It was decided by us a long time ago. There was a compilation of his goals doing the rounds on Twitter. We retweeted it. You're just watching some of these things. You're like, the guy could score every type of goal. He was absolutely lethal. He's just such a good, this is so baseline, but he was such a good footballer, like such a B-Tech, low-hanging fruit take, but he was just such a good footballer. Like that goal against Rangers with the wee shimmy on his left foot, and then headers and arriving in the box just at the right time to poke something over the line for 3 yards out under Ange's famous tapbacks and cutbacks and tap-ins.
Stephen's favourites.
He was brilliant, man.
Oh, just everything about the way he played the game was so enjoyable, wasn't it? And just when you dial it back, a footballer is very good at kicking a ball, and the technique in the guy was unbelievable. There's some times where I was watching him recently and he'd drop off, and just the way he hit the ball, it was just, you are brilliant at football. And that's what he was, because when you see him come in, I remember doing a podcast with Sasha Pisani when he first came in, like, how's this guy going to fit in? Is he going to be more a wide forward or whatever? And he ended up playing through the middle. Like, is this going to work in Scottish football? In his first game at Celtic Park, he scores a hat-trick. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. The movement from the guy. And I mentioned recently about how Daisen Maeda might be the sort of poster boy for change in Scottish football, where young players will see him and go, see if I just give my all, that is what he can be. I think KYOGO's going to be the same. I might get to the end of my lifespan and KYOGO might still be the second best striker since LARSSON, because he's been that good for Celtic. He's been incredible. I still remember
behind LARSSON, by the way.
Oh,
You said the second best since LARSSON. We don't want to throw yet more elements into that. Another argument into it.
So LARSSON then KYOGO. It might end up like that for the rest of my days, because KYOGO's been that good and Henrik Larsson probably will never be beaten. But he's just great to watch, and he kind of came in, and obviously there's that language barrier, but he took to it straight away, and he got it, he enjoyed it, and just any time there was a big game for Celtic, KYOGO was there putting the ball in the back of the net, and that's the hardest thing to do in football, but he did make it look easy. Everybody knows that there's going to be a cutback, there's going to be a tap-in, stop it, but you can't. To get 8 goals against Rangers is absolutely incredible. There's guys been here longer at Celtic that haven't get near that. He's done it, cup finals, derbies, home, away,
Champions League.
He's done it all at Celtic, man. An utterly incredible player and the hardest good night sweet prince we've had to do.
Goal compilations and best since LARSSON chat. Do you know who liked that on our X account the other day? Scott McDonald.
Did he really?
So there's a wee endorsement. There's a wee
underrated.
A wee passing of the torch. He's given it over.
Scotty boy, underrated striker in his own right. Stephen, KYOGO was... I was going to say he was the best since LARSSON, but I've said that 800 times. But the fact of the matter is, he's got big, small boots to fill, and
he's leaving big, small boots to fill.
He's leaving big, small boots to fill, and Celtic have got a job on their hands replacing him.
Easier said than done. Really difficult. I don't envy anyone coming in to have that kind of impact that KYOGO managed in his 3.5 years here. Especially that second season under Ange where he scored 34, was it? Just unbelievable, just unstoppable. Everyone still talks about that season that Griffiths hit 40, which is remarkable in itself. I'm not taking that away from him, but KYOGO did virtually that as well, with taking no penalties. I don't think I can't really remember a single penalty he took for Celtic.
He took one and missed it.
He'd Rangers to play in that.
Yeah. Much in Champions League as well. So there's very little left to say about the guy because we've been talking about him a lot recently, but just want to sort of reiterate our overall feelings, or my overall feelings about it. He's been a pleasure. He's been an absolute joy to have at the club, not just on the pitch, but he's been a exemplary role model for basically the entire club, and icon, legend, great, whatever.
Players like that.
Yeah, whatever tag you want to put on it, I'm not particularly bothered. You can have any one of them, and I think he fits the bill for every single one of them. But incredible player.
You need players like that, and it's the same as Jota coming back. And as football becomes more like systems based, and everyone's got their job and everyone's got their role. I mean, I don't know an awful lot about football tactics, but I feel that from watching the game over like my lifespan of watching football the last 20 years, it seems like the players are left with less to figure out on the pitch on their own, and there's less moments of magic required. Everything's a system. Everyone's plugged into the system, and
the pepification of
they've
football.
Got, is that what they call it? And
no, I just it's not very good. If it was someone else, it probably would have been better.
Frog that Trump voters. Is that what they use?
What a reference.
So less is left to players to figure out on the pitch, and then you get less creativity and less little sparks of magic and all that. And there's a few players who still pull it off. Like I said before, like Cole Palmer is a mystery to me. There seems like there's absolutely nothing going on between that guy's ears, but you watch him play football and he's unbelievable. And KYOGO, obviously there's plenty going on between his ears, but he's another one that's just like this maverick. He's not so much a maverick like Rio Hatate is in a way, but just moments of magic. Every time KYOGO played, you were expecting a moment of magic. You get the same thing with Jota, and I think Celtic really lacked that. And honestly, it's if I was to have my cake and eat it, I would have had KYOGO fail that medical. See, when a rumour was coming out, I was like, perfect. Absolutely perfect. So we get to keep him, and then Jota still comes our way. I can deal with that every day of the week. It's perfect.
Even if we had got him to the end of the season, that would have been ideal, wouldn't it? But if he wants to go, I don't think we can begrudge him that. And this, and even when we talk about these guys and how it's his last shot, this guy put his body on the line for Celtic. Coming back for that cup final when he
scored the lob.
Yeah, when he should have never been near that game. Probably Philip Clement, sports scientist, would have been telling him there's absolutely no way this guy... I can
guarantee you Celtic sports scientists were saying it as well, and Ange was saying, shut up, mate.
And KYOGO's like that. Ange said he was desperate to play, wanted to play, and to play that game and get the 2 goals, it was just... I was obviously watching back all his goals now over the last couple of days, but I think the commentator says an icon is born or something when he scores, and that was it. Those pictures of him scoring those goals, and even the video of Hibs fans celebrating, and then KYOGO scoring the equaliser. But the winning goal with that lob, where no other player on the pitch could have done that. No player on the pitch. There's not a lot of players in Scottish football over the last 10 years that would have been able to do what he done a lot of time.
In other news from the past week, Celtic qualified for the latter... No, not the last 16. It's not the same. There's more teams involved the latter stages of the Champions League in that sort of nerve-wracking game against young boys. I think that represents a pretty good milestone for Celtic, though. It was obviously something Brendan Rodgers... He always has targets. He always talk about these targets of the season. The game itself, at the Match podcast, as you get for every single Celtic match on patreon.com/20minutetims. Free trials are open now. If you wonder why we don't talk about the ins and outs and the ebb and flow of the game, we do it right after the match on there. But Stephen, I mean, it's just another great achievement, and it's something that Brendan Rodgers promised to do, or It's something Brendan Rodgers indicated he wanted to do, make a mark in Europe, and I don't think there's any argument the Celtic have done it.
No, it could have been easier had they beaten Zagreb or Bruges or whatever, but to have done it with a game to spare is brilliant, to be honest. And I know it's completely different. I've made this case a couple of times, but I won't labour the point. But I do think it is probably appropriate to just say, like, this is completely different as a Champions League to anything we've experienced going back now. It's a completely different dynamic as well as setup and more games, right? So, but first time of asking, Celtic have achieved what they set out to do. Now, I said a few weeks ago when we were talking about goals that Brendan Rodgers might have, I said that I don't think it will just be, right, we finished 24th and that's it. We've achieved it. We can all go home and pat ourselves in the back and all that. So there's still work to be done. There's still a mark to be left. And that, Aston Villa need to win that game because they need to try and get back into the top 8 or finish as highly as possible. But after that, we've got a knockout tie, and that's something that we've not been able to really look forward to any great degree for a very long time. We're talking about like
a couple of weeks away.
Yeah, and like qualifiers is all we've really dealt with, and playing. What was it? Who was it? Who was the team that? Who was the Norwegian team that got a Bodo Glimt? So that's really, that's like the last sort of like knockout tie we've actually faced to any great degree, and that was obviously a massive disappointment. But to actually be able to look forward to, I mean, we still don't know what's going to happen. There are many permutations, there are many twists and turns still to come.
Just on that, I don't want to plug the Patreon too much, feel like kick the arse out it, but we had a really well received podcast, The Breakfast of Champions, which is a Patreon property we do. Melly sat down with Gavin from Scotland's Coefficient. He monitors Scotland's Coefficient in Europe and in the Champions League and all that, and they had a really informative podcast about all the permutations, about how the Champions League is going to move from here on in, and Celtic's later stage opponents potentially, and what it means for next year. It was brilliant, and it explained the whole thing. So you can also catch that on Patreon if you're interested.
Yeah. So as I said, we don't know what way that's going to fall just yet. It's going to be a wee while before we know who the opponents are. But even just the thought of it, just going through to a proper like high stakes knockout phase at Celtic Park against a proper opposition is something we've not really been able to look forward to for a very long time. So that is an achievement in itself.
And Jota will be able to play.
Yeah, and Jota will be able to play. Whoever else comes in as well. And the deadline busting swoops on deadline day as well. So before it slams shut. But it's got us believing back in the team again. And that's what really, in my view, is making a mark in Europe, is making us actually believe we can achieve something. And did that to an extent as well, because going into those games, his approach was such that we thought we can take anybody on here. Didn't always come off, didn't always get the results, but to actually be marrying that with getting results and getting wins in the Champions League is just not something we experience very often at this club at all in the last decade. So yeah, it's a great achievement so far, but bigger achievements could come.
Yeah, they definitely could. And when we're looking at, go back to match day 1 when we were beat 7-1 by Borussia Dortmund, we are sitting here talking about how we need to change things.
That was the first game.
No.
Second game, sorry. Second game, it all looks so different then. And look, the aim from the start was probably get through, but the aim probably would have been try and get 10 points from our home games. We've done that, and like Stephen was saying, under Ange, we had a good crack at it, but there was games against Shakhtar where we're sitting there going, we should have won those games, but we didn't. This time around, Celtic have got the points they're required to get through, and within some of those games, the performance we could have played a lot better, but we still got results that got us to this point, and it's just great to see, because I'm sick of sitting here and going, we're 1 or 2 players away, or we're 1 chance away from that. We've got through with a game to spare, and still hopeful. I think Celtic got a very kind draw, but they maybe didn't do as well as they should have in certain games, but can learn from this year, and it's not cost us. We've got through, we've achieved the objective, and now again, with like that podcast with Gavin, the money available, or the money we're going to make here, is absolutely incredible. So this is the stage we want to be. This is the stage Celtic should be at, and this is what Brendan Rodgers probably came back, and probably part of the reason Jota came back. This is where we should be playing. We should be competing at this level. We're doing just that. We're getting through, and teams like young boys, our teams, we should be beating on the way, but it's easier said than done. Like we've seen last week, there's no easy games apart from Bratislava, and at this level, all the teams are difficult. When we look at the teams around,
Dortmund podcasts are saying exactly that about us.
Yeah.
There's no easy games at this level apart from that.
apart from Celtic, who's the mugs now that had to sack their manager? But when we look at the teams around us, like Zagreb and Bruges, they're no mugs. They're in the sort of same position as us. So it's good to see that Celtic have came up against these teams, come out on top, and we're through. And it's something to look forward to for the rest of the season. Last season was good. It was a difficult one, but see, having that excitement when you're miles ahead in the league and you've still got big European games to come, you can't whack it.
And finally, as they used to say in the news, remember they used to do that in the news? They would have a fun.
Is this going to be a nice wee heartwarming story to play us out?
It sure is. Celtic have decided to extend the contract of retired footballer and charity game player. No, I'm kidding on. I can't say that anymore about Kasper Schmeichel because the 2 double saves in that game were absolutely ridiculous. And I was unsure whether or not Kasper Schmeichel himself would fancy another year at Celtic, but I'm glad he has. He's been another inspired signing. Brendan Rodgers knew exactly what he was doing when he was bringing Kasper in. I saw an interview, Celtic TV done a podcast with Kasper. They call it a podcast, but it's just, it comes out occasionally. And he says, look, winning things is not the norm for football players, and not every football player grows up in this environment. And to come here and to take part in finals and to win finals and play in the Champions League at this stage, he goes, it's a special thing. So I'm pleased that Kasper has signed that extension. I can't say any more than that. I mean, it wasn't a spot. We were kind of sceptical when he first joined. One of Brendan's old players, Stephen. This is the Celtic scouting department. Brendan's Rolodex, but he's been brilliant for us. It's not just the playing out with the feet; it's the saves. He's made some really, really important, brilliant saves for us. And I'm looking forward to another year, Kasper.
Yeah, I think
Kasper.
Kasper. He absolutely deserves it, and so does Celtic to have a goalkeeper of that stature play for another year, because he's been brilliant. Honestly, you talk about his double save, that was absolutely stunning at the game. I've recently seen it back, and it's just brilliant for a keeper. What is he, 38 or something like that? He's going to be here until he's almost 40, but you wouldn't really think twice about potentially extending that again, because he kind of wants to keep going. And what exemplified, or rather what made him stick out as a guy who absolutely still has this and still has the hunger for this, is the reason I knew the young boys game was over was because I was watching Kasper Schmeichel at the time. So he made a save at the end, and that was the one where Brendan Rodgers turned to the dog. It was a fucking hell. Big grin on his face, right? So Kasper Schmeichel had the ball, and he's the one looking at the ref, and the ref goes to blow the whistle. But I was looking at Kasper at the time, and he just did this big celebration, booted the ball away up, and I was like, this guy absolutely loves this one. Don't get me wrong, we're all celebrating at the same time, but I was watching his reaction. Well, not even so much his reaction. I knew it was the full-time whistle because of Kasper Schmeichel's reaction to it. So it's very obvious that he's still really, really hungry for all this. Yeah, for football and probably for other things as well. Their husky goalkeeper. But the guy definitely wants a new contract. An absolute, of many this week, an absolute no-brainer.
That wasn't my favourite thing for the young boys game. My favourite thing was the ball went out for throw-in, and when the young boys players went like that, try to wind up the Celtic supporters, and at that point the Celtic supporters started singing, then it went round the whole stadium, then the players started to feed off of it, and I thought, that's the wrong thing.
That's a shame.
You've done the wrong thing there.
Yeah, it was a good game atmosphere-wise. Sort of Brendan and the fans called for it, and I think everybody delivered, didn't they? And the team got the result, but Kasper Schmeichel sort of embodied that, didn't he? If you swap him out for another keeper, you're probably not sitting here. You're going to Aston Villa going, we need to get something here. Yeah. He's made saves when he's had to. He's excelled Celtic's game, and I mean that. And it would have been so easy on Wednesday night for Kasper Schmeichel when he had the ball just to go, look, we're under a wee bit of pressure here. We need a goal. Adam Ida's up top. I'm going to play this long. But he continued Celtic to play it out from the back, and that's how we get the goal. It went down the left-hand side. Hatate puts that ball through, and Ida finishes. But Kasper Schmeichel, sort of, him and Joe Hart are a reminder that usually Celtic don't sign players in the sort of twilight of their career, do they? Apart from goalkeepers, and we're in a unique position where we can offer a lot to players like that. Kasper Schmeichel and Joe Hart have been there and done it, and it maybe looked like their careers were going downhill or on the way out, and we've offered them this, I don't want to say lifeline because the guys deserve to be there, but we've offered them this opportunity to come to Celtic, and the both of them have grasped it and went, this is incredible. When Joe Hart's on commentary, you can tell the passion, he loves it.
Yeah.
And I was at the Dundee United game at Tannadice a couple of weeks ago, and Joe Hart's there with his kid. He wasn't commentating, he was just there to go and see Celtic. And Celtic can get into your heart like that, and Kasper Schmeichel's just taking it on board. And I'm delighted for the guy. I think he's been brilliant. I was sceptical at the time because we hadn't signed them. They may have signed this guy that Brendan Rodgers knew, but he's been better than I could have imagined. And next year, look, there's going to be a point where he can't do it anymore, but I would rather see him for another year. And what a signing he's been, makes the saves, and crucially, doesn't punch it in his own net on a European night. So
look, just finally before we go, I forgot to mention this, but it warrants mentioning. I'm so pleased for Adam Idah. We're just pleased for everyone this week, but I'm pleased for Adam Idah. Mel, you said in the podcast, I think it was maybe even the last flagship we did, that he just needs something to go in off his arse, basically. And look, he might not have scored the goal, but he was in the right place. He done brilliantly to hold off the defender. He did brilliantly to get the shot off after nearly falling. And you could see on his face, man, he didn't score the goal, but he made the goal. Yeah. And the goal wouldn't have happened if he didn't do what he needed to do and do the work there. So he deserved the plaudits for the ball ended up the back of the net. But I've tried to do a really good job there of saying everything but he scored. But you could see in his face how much it meant for him. And
good knee slide.
Good knee slide into the crowd. It was more relief than anything else, Stephen, when you saw a celebration. It was more relief, and I'm so glad for him, man.
Well, I've said it several times recently, big man still needs a goal. It definitely needs a goal. He needs something to go in. I know he was heavily involved in that goal, but it doesn't count for his own tally. I know it's absolutely nowhere near a goal
for you.
I know he got it at the stadium. I heard the announcer give him it.
The announcer gave it to him, but I feel quite bad for Idah this week, because even the existence of Adam Idah is more testament to how good KYOGO has been, because you've just sat here for the guts of an hour talking about strikers and having to replace KYOGO and what we're going to do. We're going to need to go full on here.
Maeda going to play up top.
It's Maeda going to talk. Meanwhile, we've got this £9 million striker, and we've not even mentioned his name up until him hitting one in off somebody else. But it's an opportunity for him as well. I think he's a footballer. He's going to back himself to hopefully stake a claim now that KYOGO's gone. I mean, this is his opportunity to say we don't need going out and sign the £13 million strikers who've got me. I don't really believe that, and I think we definitely need something else anyway. But it's an opportunity for him. I'm just really glad that he got that. Yeah, he didn't score it, but he got to go and have a celebration in front of the fans. Maybe some of whom are starting to question him a little bit with his not so great scoring record recently. Just a good moment for him, and hopefully he can. I'm struggling to find different ways to say it, but he needs a goal. He needs to start scoring quite soon.
I've got no doubt it'll happen for him. I think he's still a good player, and a wee bit of a Jota delivery might help things on a wee bit. And on that, let's wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks to everyone who supports us on Patreon. If you get your Celtic content on Substack, you can find us on there. And if you like to listen through Apple, we do extra content on there. Just check it out. There's links in every bio. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will be back next week.